Now, Jack and the Beanstalk, Beauty and the Beast, Rumpelstiltskin, much loved fairy tales. But have you ever stopped to think about how old they are? Research that's published today says they're much, much older than we think. Those three examples have been traced back through folk stories around 4,000 years, before languages like English or Italian even existed. Well, we're also going to turn to professional storyteller Vanessa Woolf for more about the power of fairy stories that have come down through the ages like this. I mean, Vanessa, when you heard about this research, did it surprise you? Thousands of years old.
I have to say, it didn't surprise me at all. In fact, I would have been surprised to hear that they hadn't been that old, in a way, that somebody would have kind of made them up only a few hundred years ago, because they talk about the most important realities, struggles, difficulties of the human condition, and they're almost like dreams. They're like sort of collective dreams about the most important decisions that we have to make as people.
So we look at one, Jack and the Beanstalk, which has been made into all sorts of stories and movies, and the little boy's, you know, trying to reach something and trying to help his family, and you've seen this develop.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. So that's a really old, really old story. They've listed it as one of their thousands of year old stories. And it's also one of the stories that you learn in school when you're first learning how to read. So it's the bedrock of our culture, in a way. And it's all about this castle with this powerful ogre who's rich and who has all the power. And then some poor Jack character comes along and takes the treasure. And
we can all aspire to that.
Yeah, and I think that's really like Occupy. We just love the kind of concept of this very, very rich and powerful thing, and taking from the rich and giving to the poor.
Now, I know that you professionally tell stories. We're going to turn to another one. Vanessa in Action is telling us a little of the famous Snow Queen story. Now, the version here is about a little boy called Kay who has a piece of mirror in his heart. So it's turned into a block of ice. He can't feel anything. So one day, Kay is at home doing maths homework and he looks through the window.
And he peeped through. And he could see all the rooftops and everything frozen, solid, hard and glittering. And there was just one snowflake turning and twirling in the dark night, getting bigger and bigger. And as he watched, the snowflake turned into the shape of a woman, and she stopped and she stood in the air just outside his windowsill, and she looked like the most beautiful and intelligent woman he had ever seen. And he thought, I could ask her anything. And he tried to get his window open, but it was frozen solid, and he pulled it, and then he stepped out onto the windowsill and he looked up at her. And she leaned over and she kissed the top of his head. And it felt like a sword going through his whole body. It was agony. And then she leaned over and she kissed him again. And his whole body went numb. He couldn't feel anything. And then she said, I better not kiss you again, or I'll kill you.
Vanessa, you've sent shivers up and down the back of my neck. And it must be amazing as you tell those stories to children, as we'd expect, but to adults as well.
Yeah, that's right. It is amazing. And I think that I've taken to, before I do a storytelling session, I'll warn people that what to expect, that it will be like going on a journey, like a real journey. Only in your imagination. And at the end of a story, most likely you'll feel as if you've been somewhere else. People always say you get spellbound. You know, that's one of the things they say about storytelling. And it really is almost like an altered state. And so I think it's, and why should that just be for children? In fact, actually, adults can enter into that state more readily.
And they tell such fundamental moral stories as well, don't they?
Oh, yeah, they do. And it's very interesting what you should say about morals, because stories, including these stories that we're talking about, have been used by so many different people to push their different moral agendas, whatever they might be. So if you look at fairy tales as they were told in Victorian times, they would push this kind of idea of piety and holiness and goodness, and being like, you know, for the girls, they would have to be a very, very good little girl.
Demure, very modest.
Very demure, yeah, that's right. And of course, that feels a little bit strange to our modern ears. So we would tell the same stories and use the same magical concepts, but we would tell them perhaps with our sensibility.
They become kind of fundamental myths that can be pulled this way and that. They could be about a woman's place, you know, is being kept down, or about liberation.
Absolutely. And Beauty and the Beast is a really classic example of that. Because when I first heard the story of Beauty and the Beast, I thought it was all about this good little girl. She doesn't ask for any presents. She's sent away to the horrible castle. She's really, really nice and good. And then it turns out that she gets her reward by the beast turns out to be this kind of rich guy in disguise. And so the reward is, if you're really, really good, you get to marry the richest guy. And to me, I thought, that doesn't sound like a very nice moral. But of course, that's not the only way you can tell it.
And something else that really fascinates me, Vanessa, is that storytelling has come back. You know, we're in the age of screens, of the internet, of apps, of devices. But you look at something like, I don't know, The Moth in the United States, or the way that storytelling has become a revived part of theatre here.
Yes.
People are going back to very traditional modes.
Absolutely, that's right. And for adults, so there's The Moth, which is true life storytelling, so people telling stories from their lives. And then there's something like the Crick Crack Club, and they do traditional stories for adults, or something like I do, London Dreamtime, which is in derelict buildings and strange corners of London in the middle of the night and stuff like that. And what they're all doing is they're taking these archetypes and these magical images that are so powerful, they shine like beacons through the ages of anything we throw at them, because they're about us.
Vanessa, we have to leave it there. Vanessa Woolf, thank you very much. And it's good to talk about inspiring stories. We spend a lot of time telling you about stories that are massively significant, really matter, but can be somewhat depressing about the state of the world. So it's been good to talk to Vanessa here on Impact today. Do stay with us.